Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. On this episode, fellow Army veteran, entrepreneur, and good friend, and all those sort of things that I caveat with everybody because I think everybody's my good friend here lately. That's the way I feel. Dean Wegner is joining us. Dean, how you doing, man?
Otis, I'm doing fantastic, and we are new friends, but fast becoming good friends, and I'm excited for a great discussion.
Awesome, awesome. All right, man. I got to know. Uh,
Uh-oh.
yeah. This is a hard one. What the heck?
Starting
You
it right off with a fastball.
I know. Well, there ain't no slack here, man. If you want slack, cut the rope. Get out of the kitchen. You know all the rules. Uh, but what in the world made you come up with the idea to start that an apparel company? I'm being nice on the apparel thing. I just wanted to say making daggum t-shirts. Why? What in the world? What in the world were you thinking that I want to make t-shirts?
Well, Otis, it's been 5 years, just a month ago in July, that we hit our fifth anniversary, and my wife has asked that question quite a few times. It has been far more challenging, far more difficult than I've ever imagined. So I'm exhausted, but I'm even more energized because it really lies in my insatiable desire to know that I'm making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you a little bit of context, you had mentioned you and I being fellow Army veterans. So I graduated from West Point in 93, went to flight school, learned how to fly helicopters, then went to the Army Special Forces Ranger School and spent an amazing 7 years active duty. And this is going to be a little bit longer story, but it will ultimately answer your question because I tell everybody I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur. But when I left the Army in 2000, I couldn't even spell entrepreneur. I
Mm-mm.
had no idea this world existed. And so often we're a product of our environment. And growing up, had an amazing dad, and he was a 30-year engineer for Alcoa. So this big Fortune 100 aluminum company. And most of his friends, most of our neighbors worked for big companies.
Mm-hmm.
So Cam, when I left the Army in 2000, what did I think I was going to do? Work for
Go
a big
work for a big
company.
company. Oh yeah.
Exactly. So I spent 6 years at Procter and Gamble. I spent 5 years at Mars and worked on brands like Crest and Tide and M&Ms. And I'm so thankful for those experiences because both of them are just world-class marketing and branding companies. But P&G is a massive $80 billion company.
Yeah.
Mars is half the size, but still a $40 billion company. And I had fairly big jobs and was very well paid. But I realized at one point that if you pull me out, the next guy steps right up and the machine doesn't skip a beat. And I truly wrestled with, am I making a difference if I'm not replaceable? And that was really the catalyst to become an entrepreneur.
You talk about making a difference, being that catalyst, and Dad, I think the undertone of your question around t-shirts is that it's a pretty competitive market, and with not the best margins, and it's something that I think a lot of people may look at without realizing on the business side that the math's not as nice as some other industries, to put it that way. Was that part of your inspiration? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they see industries like that, some people shy away because it doesn't make as much sense as other industries with higher margins. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there's the entrepreneur who says, I can change that and I can make a difference there. Was that your approach?
Well, Cam, I am answer B to that. And here's what I love apparel, and I'll tell you ultimately how I got in apparel. But do either of you live in a nudist colony?
No, we do not.
I joke
I'm
because
not
I haven't met
allowed to
anyone that
say.
does. Yeah, Otis may want to live in a nudist colony, but he doesn't.
Don't zoom out.
But the reason why I joke about that, literally, we have an opportunity to impact each and every person because every day you wake up and you make a decision on what you're going to wear. And to give you some shocking statistic around the apparel industry, when I graduated from West Point in 93, over 50% of the apparel was made in the US. Today it's 3%. 3% is all that's made here in the US. And that shocking statistic, Cam, was funny to see your face when I said that number, like, ooh, because most people don't realize how low it is. So that gave birth to our tagline, "Where is yours made?" And it's designed to be provocative. So, hey, Cam, great looking shirt. Where's yours made?
I get $15 on Amazon, so I'm guessing not here.
Well, I don't know where it is made, but I can tell you where it's not made, and that's made here in the good old US of A. And if you have veterans like Otis does, if you have values like Otis does, like you do, Cam, I mean, you want a tag that says "Made in USA." You want a tag that, you know, supports American workers, that is a brand that celebrates patriotism, and that's what we offer. And I didn't initially envision, you know, going into the apparel industry. If you remember me saying I'm a veteran and entrepreneur, not even knowing how to spell entrepreneur, so I didn't think I had it in me to start a business from scratch. So I entered the entrepreneur world in 2012 when I bought an existing business, and it was a government contractor that produced dress uniforms for the military. So Otis, you remember those old fancy dress blue pants you wore?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. So that was one of our contracts. So we had thousands of uniforms every week for Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines that we produced. And I'm also passionate about job creation. And Otis, my initial thought was, I want to win more contracts. And then I thought, because then we'll win more jobs. But as I really started to understand the industry, the government contracting industry, it's a bidding process. So Cannon, if you and I are bidding on a contract and you had it before and I won, you know, net your jobs transferred to me and we don't actually create any jobs. And for me, that's the point when the light bulb went off and the wheels started turning. And I thought back to the days at P&G and Mars, and I thought, what if instead of being a government contractor, what if we built a brand? And what if instead of what 97% of companies do and produce cheap labor overseas, what if we made the intentional choice to produce right here in the US? And our vision is to build this iconic American brand. And if we deliver on that vision and build this iconic American brand with the same recognition of a Nike, Polo, Under Armour, but it's all American made, think of the jobs we could create. Think of the difference we could make, and ultimately think of the incredible legacy we would leave. So that's where we started 5 years ago. And again, I'm exhausted, but even more energized right now.
So the idea, which you know, you and I have talked about this several times already, but the idea is great, and lots of people have great ideas. I want to solve, you know, cure cancer. I want to end hunger. All these sort of things. How did you, when you said, all right, this is the way I want to do it? I mean, how did you even start? You know, where is the factory? Since there's only 3% made in America, which means there's probably only one or two factories, and I use the air quotes because they're not factories like you're thinking on TV with giant assembly lines. How do you even find them?
Well, Otis, I believe, you know, my priorities in life align with God, family, and country. And it was a challenging 5 years because government contract, and they're massive contracts, but they're low margins. But what was so incredible about those 5 years is, although we were producing military uniforms, it was apparel. So that gave me an opportunity for 5 years to go ahead and learn the apparel industry. And to your point, there's not that many people that are doing it. Apparel is a massive $300 billion industry. When only 3% is there, it's not a lot, but that's still a $9 billion industry. And I went from being a manufacturer to a brand, and focusing instead of on the manufacturing to focusing on the marketing and the branding and the customer experience. And what those 5 years allowed me to do is find the best darn t-shirt maker in the country, which we found in Texas, provide them our specs, and then they produce for us. Cam, it also provided us the opportunity to find the best darn sock maker in the country, which is in North Carolina. We provide them our specs and they produce for us. So we now have 11 states across the US that produce. And as we're growing and expanding and building, one of the things that we're starting to work more closely on, is partnership with those contract manufacturers, because if we want to build this iconic billion-dollar brand, we're going to need more capacity. I mean, there's just not enough right there right now. So, we are becoming even closer partners with our contract manufacturers.
Can you talk a little bit about that switch from manufacturer to brand? Because I think that's something that I don't know if we've dove in on that kind of a switch inside of a business before on the podcast. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that was like as a leader.
Well, Cam, that was really born out of an honest assessment of who I am. And there's a number of things that I'm fairly good at, and some number of things I'm not good at all. And there's things that I enjoy, things that I'm passionate about, and things that I really don't enjoy that much. And those 5 years, although it was incredible learning, incredible experience, what I really learned about myself is when it comes to manufacturing, production operations, that's not who I am. I'm just flat out not that good at that. But what I also realized that my passion, my background, my experience, think of Procter & Gamble and Mars and the incredible training for 11 years I learned at those companies. I enjoy the marketing. I enjoy the strategy. I enjoy business development, building relationships. So I said, I need amazing product, but I want to focus on the marketing and brand message. So as I learned the apparel industry, the most common model in manufacturing is contracted manufacturing. So Nike, for example, produces in China, produces in Vietnam, Bangladesh, all around the world, but they don't own those factories. So that gave me an opportunity to focus really on what I'm more passionate about, what I have a higher level of expertise in, and then really have great partners that are responsible for producing amazing product.
How do you guarantee the outcome? And this is something we have talked about before on the show, of that when the partners are great because you bring in, other people, get those other perspectives, other skill sets, all of that kind of great stuff that can provide so much synergy for a business. But then also you are removing some of your control over the final product, the final outcome that a customer is getting. How have you worked to maintain those relationships so that outcome is always, up to par with what you want?
So 2 answers to that, Cam. Number one, I have visited all of our facilities. And, that is first and foremost important. And it's interesting, just, dovetailing on that last point there, because I have met the plant managers, I have met the factory owners, and Cam, they look at me and say, Dean, you want to build a brand? Why would you ever want to do that? That's way too hard. And I am fascinated walking around the plant, but my head hurts because I'm like, how does this all work? How does it all together? I mean, that's just not how my mind is wired. So, just 2 different perspectives, and God wired each and every one of us to pursue what, we have those God-given talents to do. But the other part is, now that we've visited the facilities and see and meet and understand and meet firsthand the American workers, I'm blessed with an amazing team, and we have a robust QA process that we participate in. So if you ordered something, Cam or Otis, you ordered something, 99.9% of the time, you're going to get an amazing product. But it is a human process, and it's humans making it, it's humans inspecting it. So, you know what? It's been rare that we have bad product, but it does happen. And what we found is, with that customer experience, if we go out of our way, Cam, to make you a happy customer, you're going to be more enthralled with us as a brand. Otis, if you order as a business, if you order a charity and there's a hiccup along the way, but we go above and beyond and out of our way to go ahead and solve that problem, you're more tightly entwined with us, because you know that no matter what happens, you've got our back.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that all goes into, and I want to ask the broader picture of this, because, it's the difference between starting a business, based quite literally, pressing t-shirts because in your garage, because I know a guy around the corner that was doing that for a while, right? I mean,
I got a guy I coach rugby with that does that for a living.
yeah. I mean, and building a brand. How does that, what does that look like as the CEO, the founder, the leader of the organization in the vision for the path? How do you do that? Create the brand.
Can we do this, Otis? Can we do a quick, kindergarten style show and tell?
Oh, well, no, because we're radio, man. This is, I mean,
Well, actually,
it'll work for our YouTube channel, but all the folks listening in the
yeah, well, I'll describe it, narrate. You can help me to make sure, because this will ultimately reinforce kind of our focus, but it will ultimately answer your question of where we're going. So both of you guys mentioned t-shirts. You know, there are literally billions of t-shirts sold every year. So whether it's your friend in his garage, Otis, or your friend, I mean, they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two sides of our business. So we have a consumer brand side. So has things like I'm wearing this chambray dress shirt that's Authentically American branded. So whether it's a dress shirt, polo, t-shirt, socks, we have things that are Authentically American branded. We also have collegiate licenses. We have my alma mater of West Point. We have Naval Academy. We have all the military schools. We have Alabama and Auburn. So we've got 12 schools there. So that's all on the consumer side. 80% of our business is to other businesses, charities, and organizations. So we have big clients like Pepsi and Comcast and Bridgestone. Otis, you'll appreciate a lot of our veteran-focused charities like Wounded Warrior and Tunnel to Towers and Team Red, White, and Blue. So those are big ones, all the way down to small businesses. But the most common item purchased is the t-shirt.
Yep.
So this is one of my personal favorites here. So I'm holding up a gray Go Army t-shirt, and I love that we can see each other, but I wish you were here with me in person, because Cam, if you could feel this, you'd be like, that has got to be the softest t-shirt I've ever felt. And that is by design, because who doesn't love a nice soft t-shirt?
Yep.
The other thing, Otis, the print. Think a lot of the t-shirts in your closet, a lot of them have that heavy plastisol ink. And on a hot summer day, it sticks to your chest. You wash it a few times, it will crack. And we very intentionally use a soft hand water-based ink, because we want the fabric, the print, to include tagless, to be a part of our t-shirt. So every one of our t-shirts is incredibly soft. But Cam, I think you'll love this. Otis, you'll really love it. Thinking back to the PT days in the Army. So this is our sweat activated print innovation. So I'm going to spray this with a water bottle. And Cam, I'm going to watch your face. Watch what happens. So it's printed Go Army. Watch what magically appears.
That is awesome.
So Beat Navy magically appears, and I'm turning it around. There's our vintage U.S. flag, our equivalent Nike swoosh. I'm spraying the back. And what appears?
Beat Navy.
Beat
That
Navy.
is so cool.
And Cam, I love to highlight this, because I've had people say, Dean, no offense, I don't care where it's made. The shirt's incredibly soft. I can't even feel the print. And like you said, like, that is awesome. How in the world did you get Beat Navy to appear? And when you have such an amazing product experience, you want to learn more about the brand. So you'll look in the tag and be like, Authentically American and Made in USA. Back to that 3% number, you'll realize that nothing in your closet is American made. So Otis, to answer your question, that's where it starts, with an amazing product experience. But then what happens when you have an amazing product experience, you go to our website, you go to our Facebook page, social media, and you will learn the value and the ethos and everything behind our brand. You'll learn that we're a brand that celebrates patriotism. You'll learn that we're a brand that believes in the American worker. And we're also a brand that very intentionally donates 10% of our profits to veteran and first responder charities, because we want to honor our American heroes. So when you have an amazing product experience and you've got the story behind the brand, that's how Authentically American is becoming more and more people's favorite brand.
What I love about that is and I actually had this thought last night. So I got new phones in the household, and I was going through my cases, and I got one with I think we've all seen like the whiskey barrel American flag phone cases. And I was laughing because I was like, this is the Patriot tax. There's about mine was about $15 more than the other phone cases we were ordering. And that's a little bit of a joke there. But what I think is interesting is that there are other businesses out there who see the same 3% of apparel being made in the US and want to capitalize on that, but then they do it without maximizing the utility of the product. They're doing it just to do it because they could sell it for that, Patriot tax, get that little bit more. And then they're still making cheap quality stuff that isn't going to, provide that same utility to the person. And I love that you're approaching it from the point of the product. And then it's like the fact that it's made in America is the bonus. It's the biggest bonus. It's the coolest part. And it's like, it's all amazing. And it's so, it's tied into the brand, but that's a bonus. The product is so good that you won't even care where it's coming from. And I think that is just such a big lesson, because so many people will, whether it's, made in America or another different type of, cultural trend where we're looking at, changing the industry and these type of things. So many people will see that and then look to capitalize on it in that kind of a negative way, rather than providing so much extra utility in the product that it's really changing the industry, rather than trying to make a quick buck. And then, that 3% drops down even lower because they're making crappy t-shirts, that kind of thing.
Well, Cam, it is counterintuitive. And one of the things we've been blessed with is some incredible national media exposure. So two of the recent ones, one was a feature story in Forbes Magazine for our 5th anniversary, was also down on the floor of NASDAQ for a TV interview. And this point came up reinforcing what you're saying, because it's counterintuitive, but we actually want you as a consumer to buy less. Mm-hmm. If this is a t-shirt that you buy, you're not going to wear it once or twice, and then it's more fast fashion, throw it away. We want it to be your favorite t-shirt, but you wear it 20, 25 times and it still wears well and it's still in your closet and you're like, I don't want to wear it again. And that's what we want. We want it to be your favorite, but it's not disposable. It's fast fashion. So It's counterintuitive, but ultimately we want you to buy less.
Do you, trying to think how to ask this, do you find in the marketing side of it, do you find issues communicating all these different aspects? Or is it kind of like what I was saying, where it's like the t-shirt's so good that this is all kind of like icing on the cake type of thing?
Well, Otis said you're super sharp. Obviously he's biased being your son, but he didn't say you're a mind reader, because that is our biggest challenge, because we have tried some digital advertising. And since there's so many entrepreneurs tying in, that's what people try. Like, hey, digital is not like running a Super Bowl ad. You've got an opportunity at much lower cost to go and do that. And what we found is we struggled on the digital side because we're a new brand. We're not even 5 years old. So if somebody said Authentically American and they saw it digitally, it'd be like, Authentically American, who, what? I don't get it. Mm-hmm. But where we're focusing a lot of our time and energy and efforts is more event-focused marketing, because when you can see and feel and touch the product, that makes all the difference in the world. And I'll highlight one more example, the importance around products. So for our 5th anniversary, we're also back on Fox and Friends. And so thankful for that, because 2 million people a day, tune into Fox and Friends. And this wasn't the most recent one, but this was last November. The host, Otis, who's a fellow Army veteran, Pete Hegseth, came on national TV in front of 2 million people. He said this pair of socks are his favorite pairs. So I'm holding up, these fun patriotic socks. They're a mismatch. One's a red and white stripes. The other one is a blue and white stars. And I joke that nobody wears ties anymore. Socks are the new ties. And just a fun way to reinforce your fashion sense. But it was great learning for us, because again, on national TV in front of 2 million people, he said they're his favorite pair of socks, but he didn't mention anything about them being American made. Mm-hmm. He said they're so soft, they're so comfortable, they have this fun patriotic design. That's why they're his favorite pair. But Cam, when you have a product experience like that, same way, you will read the fine print where it says designed in Nashville, made in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. But unless you have that type of experience, you don't really care. And that will be the last time that you'll wear from this brand. But when you have that experience, you're like, you know what? Let me get another pair. Let me tell a friend. But it starts with the product first.
All right, I got to jump on something, pick on you a little bit. Yeah, West Point, Army. It ain't like you're a designer wear background. Going and getting the Gucci stuff. How do you dealing with the creativity of the products? Now, like I said, I'm picking on you. The West Point t-shirt that says Beat Navy, that didn't take a whole lot of thinking.
No.
But a lot of other things that you have, a lot of other products and ideas that you have do. How are y'all dealing with that?
Well, Otis, it's very fair for you to pick on me because I have had other people say, Dean, how did you get in apparel? Because for 11 years, you wore a uniform and you don't have to worry about picking what's there. So nobody's ever called me a snappy dresser. And my passion is not necessarily in apparel. My passion is around making a difference. My passion is around creating American jobs. So we just happen to be in the apparel industry. So the way I make up for so many of my shortcomings is hiring an amazing team. And if she was here with us, should I say? So Sarah Davis, who's our creative director, if you want to be in the Army, where you're going to go to school likely would be West Point. If you want to be in the apparel industry, one of the best choices you can make is the O'Moore School of Design. So that's where Sarah went. And I don't even get involved on the design front because Otis, I'll just screw it up. But Sarah has a great eye. She's got the background, the experience, and the perspective there. So when it comes to design, when it comes to apparel industry knowledge, we as a team lean on Sarah.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's such a great business lesson, truly. I mean, to realize that, hey, by the way, I've been wearing olive drab for the last 11 years, and I'm pretty comfortable in my olive drab. Matter of fact, look at it. I'm sporting some very, very militaristic colors with my faded.
Where is yours made, though, Otis? Is the question I like to ask.
Probably Vietnam. I mean, yeah, you know the deal. But my point of that is I'm not a fashion savvy guy either. So I go to Miss Suzanne or Miss Sierra when it comes to those sort of things. And that's what you're doing with your business. And that's a smart way to do it is like, hey, I want to be in this apparel business. And this is a means to create my purpose, to fulfill my purpose. But I got to have some really smart people around me to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I will say, the number one reason why we launched the brand because of my initial vision and my wife, Kelly, coming behind me. But the only reason we're here 5 years later is because of our team. The only reason we'll be here 5 years from now, if we're having a 10th anniversary discussion, it will be everyone that we've hired and then the team and the culture that we built.
Yeah.
Where is your creativity? Because I think if you're, talking about apparel, I think the gut instinct, it's designing the t-shirts and that kind of stuff, but it's not that. So where do you find your creative outlet inside of the business? Is it in the marketing area?
So get a little bit involved on the marketing side, but I am very driven, very goal-oriented. So Otis, you know this, with being an Army Ranger, incredible work ethic and drive. And so many people told me up front, like your question, like, how did you get into t-shirts? Like, Dean, don't do it. If we would have brought this money to Shark Tank, they would have laughed me out and said, you know what? Why in the world would you ever want to pay so much more here in the US? So I think the initial creativity cam was saying, you know what? In spite of so many people saying, no, it's not possible, truly believing in what we're doing, truly having a sense of purpose and passion, and then building a team with that same sense of values, I think is where my creativity and passion lies. And then on the flip side, people will say, Dean, it's rare that I ever meet anyone that's been on national TV once. How have you been on national TV 20 times? And, it's really a twofold answer. One is I believe in investing in relationships. So that's one. So the very first time I was on national TV, met a lot of people backstage and studio and built relationships. And then fortunately it went well. And not because I had all the right answers, but I had people say after, like, Dean, you truly believe in what you're doing. You truly have a passion and believe that you're going to deliver. I'm like, absolutely. And one thing I found is passion is contagious. And people, will rally and believe in passion. And that's what we're selling ultimately, is an opportunity to go ahead and put a shirt on your back that aligns with your values. And oh, by the way, you don't have to compromise. It's going to be an amazing product. And oh, by the way, it's not going to be outrageously priced either. If you're buying a known national brand, we're going to be parity priced.
How did you set up? And because I know in this sort of industry, it takes a lot of capital to get started. because most manufacturers aren't gonna make it and then let you sell it and then let you pay for it. It doesn't work that way. So how did you get that part of your business up and going?
So twofold. So one, Otis, in order to have the right long-term view, did bring on some angel investors, fellow West Point classmates of mine, fellow friends of mine that, like you, had, strong values that aligned with who I am and what I stand for. And that gave us some initial capital. But the other reason around having a contract manufacturing network, so if you looked at my balance sheet, you're not going to see, all this machinery and equipment. So that is on the balance sheet of all of our contract manufacturers. So that's helpful from a capital standpoint. So I don't have to buy a new sewing machine every time we want to expand. I don't have to buy a new, distribution center every time we expand. Now, what I do envision in the future, which will be more capital, is it will probably be more of a joint venture, because there's no billion-dollar company out there that's producing for us. These are relatively small businesses, so we'll have to look at some creative ways to have a joint venture in the future.
That's such a great piece, I think, for really any business to understand. And I'll just reemphasize it: the relationship, both with not just with people you're working with and your clients, but even the investors. I think a lot of businesses make this mistake, and they're so desperate for the capital that they never do that alignment of the values with the investor. And that's such a critical piece that enables you to have the culture that you have. You have that alignment, and that's a great foundational thing that it's really easy to talk about, but I bet I'm sure now you may not have had to, but I know some other entrepreneurs that have had to, and tell that investor, no, thank you. I mean, I need the money, but not willing to compromise. There's the big fancy word I was looking for. Not willing to compromise my values in order to do that. Did you? I'll just throw it out there rather than assuming that you never had to. Did you ever have that kind of experience where it's like, no, that's outside our lane, outside our values. I don't want to do that. Don't want to work with that.
Well, Otis, I'll tell you one example where you look back and you say, well, Dean, that was pretty smart of you. And I'll give another example.
One? You got one?
There's not that many. The other one, you'll say, like, if you're that smart that way, why weren't you that smart, from a business standpoint? So I knew, very early on that it's incredibly difficult to go ahead and raise capital. And if you're a professional investor, whether it's private equity, whether it's venture capital, the numbers I hear is you may look at 100 deals to invest in two or three. So when you've got 100 deals, the assumption is almost all of them are going to be good. They're going to have some sort of business merit. They're going to have a business plan. They're going to have a pro forma financial forecast. They're going to have everything there. But I think one, you not only want to invest in the horse, you want to invest in the jockey. But then so often it's that relationship. So was very smart up front, Otis. And I said, well, if I'm going for an angel investor, let's find somebody that has, one, obviously some financial wherewithal, but whose values and ethos align well with who I am and who our brand is and what we're looking to build. And was so thankful, so fortunate, blown away, because in 30 days, found 4 investors and we raised $500,000. So you're like, Dean, well, that was pretty smart how you did that. So I wish I would have applied that same logic as a business, because I am borderline ADHD, and every new opportunity, every new thing that comes along, this shiny object, I'm chasing it. Like, I'm a hockey player. So somebody made an introduction to the Nashville Predators. I thought, well, wouldn't it be so cool to go ahead and have our brand, within the NHL and have a professional sports, which we did, but we spent a lot of time and energy chasing that. There are all kinds of other things that we chased that really didn't produce any fruits. And COVID was incredibly challenging, but what it really forced us to do was focus. And what we realize is that our brand resonates broadly everywhere, but where our brand really resonates is with veteran-owned businesses, veteran-operated businesses, and veteran-focused charities. And like any B2B client sale, there's a sales cycle. So, Cam, there were some companies that we talked to for 6 months or a year or more, and we still wouldn't get there. But what we found, Cam, is if you're a veteran-owned business, if you're a veteran-focused charity, you have like-minded values, you're cut from the DNA, and every business, every charity for the most part, buys branded apparel. And when we give you a choice for a high-quality, American-made, competitively priced item, forget 6 months, it's oftentimes 6 minutes. So like, I get it, I'm switching.
Did you I just had to ask, mentioning the Predators there. So I think that Reebok deal runs up at the end of this season. So you got some news you want to drop on us?
Cam, I wish. And it's not next year, because ultimately this vision, to build this iconic American brand, and with my being a West Point graduate, I hate the fact that West Point, for example, is a Nike school. And to Nike's credit, they've built an incredible brand with an incredible following, and they've got strong product. But this isn't next year. This isn't 5 years. This is probably 10 years from now. It would be a dream. It would be a vision for West Point, instead of being a Nike school, to be an authentically American school. With my being a hockey player, would love, for example, for the NHL, instead of having Reebok and Adidas jerseys, having authentically American jerseys. So that's something for me to lay awake at night and dream. But the focus right now is all about bringing in revenue. So we are now starting to have the likes of Pepsi and Comcast and Bridgestone as clients. And it's interesting, because initially I thought I want to steer clear of Fortune 500 companies because they're so big. They're so bureaucratic, which means a long sales cycle. But have you guys heard the concept of an ERG, an employee resource group?
I have not.
But go ahead and explain it.
I see the heads nodding two different directions. So I was not familiar with it until a couple companies reached out to me and said, Dean, we have an ERG. I'm like, what's an ERG? They said it's an employee resource group. So we have an African-American ERG. We have an LGBTQ ERG, and we have a veteran ERG. So God, family, country is my priority. So I'm like, oh, this is like Sunday school at church. So there's this smaller little affinity group here, with like-minded values. And they said, Dean, we don't want Nike. We don't want Made in China. We want to partner with you. And what I realized, these Fortune 500 companies, these small little veteran ERGs have thousands of employees. And for example, HCA is a Fortune 100 hospital company here in Nashville. We have just now started working with them. They have 40,000 veterans. Pepsi has thousands of veterans. Comcast, thousands of veterans. So these small little ERGs, these small affinity groups, have thousands of employees. So that is just a great entry for us into these bigger companies.
One thing that comes to mind, and I thought of this earlier, so I'm glad we came back around to it, talking about being able to work with West Point, using the logos and those kind of things. What does that process look like when they're under contract with Nike? Isn't there a little bit of an issue to where, I don't know, like I'm part of me is just thinking like you sell too many t-shirts and Nike comes in and squashes you or something. Because I know U of A here, we're Nike as well, and that we have to go through all the special process with the school to use the block A, and like there's that full process with it. What did that look like for you as the business of trying to navigate that landscape?
So the very first license was West Point, and to your point, Cam, there's a lot of hurdles, a lot of paperwork, product samples, and everything. And most colleges like West Point, like Alabama, outsource their licensing to a third party. And if you've heard the name IMG and Learfield, they were two big players within the collegiate licensing industry. So those two came together and they formed CLC, the Collegiate Licensing Company. So all of our licensing approval, goes through CLC and a couple of other smaller licensing companies. But the very first one was challenging. But once they realized, CLC, that we have amazing product, that we pay our royalties. So on average, we pay a 12% royalty for every item that we sell. So once we got into that process, it's been relatively easy to bring more. So that was one part of the answer. The other answer is that every school has an exclusive contract. So, for example, I'm a hockey player, and as much as I would love for the hockey team to be having an Army hockey sweat activated T-shirt to wear when they're working out, we can't do that because of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
But what that doesn't forbid us to do is work with alumni, work with booster clubs. So, for example, Army Rugby just won the national championship. I mean, it was huge. And a number of rugby players are big fans of our brands, and we partner with their booster clubs. So hundreds of rugby players across the country now have Army Rugby national champions. They've got a print tee, they've got sweat activated, they got T-shirts, they've got fun Hawaiian shirts. But that is okay because it wasn't an official game, it wasn't official practice, it wasn't something official for the team.
Okay. One more question I have before we wrap up here is,
Yeah.
what kind of lessons did you get from your time at Mars? And bonus points here if it involves something to do with candy.
So I think the biggest thing I learned is just kind of the marketing branding playbook. And there's not just one step, okay, here's this 10 steps to build a brand, but just to be creative and be resourceful. And one of the things that I realized is I don't have a Super Bowl ad budget. You know, Swiffer, are you guys familiar with Swiffer?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why you're both nodding your head yes is because I was there in 2002 when Procter & Gamble launched Swiffer. The year one marketing budget alone was 100 million.
Wow.
100 million. So I didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. So I had to think resourcefully and creatively, like, how do I go ahead and get huge exposure and not having any money? And the thinking was there was a whole earned media PR strategy for each one of those brands. And I thought, Cam, we've got this feel-good American story. We got amazing product. We're supporting the American worker. You know, we're donating 10% to veteran charities. So that was the hook that we threw out there to a lot of the national TV opportunities. And they bit, and I couldn't afford the coverage that we're getting. I couldn't afford the exposure, but had to think creatively and say, how do we get that exposure but not have the money to do it?
That's and that's such a critical piece of it too, right? Because you can't build a brand unless people know about the brand,
right?
I mean, that's and
are you guys baseball fans?
Say again?
Are you guys baseball fans?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm a disappointed baseball fan, perpetually disappointed baseball fan. Yes.
So that must be tied to a specific team. If you remember the whole movie, you know, the line, build it and they will come, you know, Field of Dreams. Well, we believe the opposite philosophy, because just because we built something, just because we have this amazing T-shirt, no one's coming to buy it. We have to tell them, Cam. We've got to get the word out, and was so incredibly thankful for the opportunity to be in Forbes Magazine, to be in Fox and Friends, was also thankful for the invite to be on your podcast, because you guys have a great following. A lot of them are veterans, a lot of them are entrepreneurs. So a whole new group of people will now say Authentically American. They won't say who. They're like, oh, now I get it. It's an Authentically American apparel. They've got amazing product.
Oh yeah. And that's the secret, folks. I mean, there's, you know, everybody talks about the secret sauce and, you know, the secret recipe and all that. Well, it's not really that secret. It is you get in front of people, you create the relationships, you build the product actually does what you say it will do, adding value. You know, just another little secret to you, business folks, is you got to do all these things. There's no skipping it, because you skip it, you might get that one contract, but you ain't getting the second one, and that's no way to sustain the business. So man,
Notice there's been no silver bullet. There's been no shortcuts. We're an overnight success story, 5 years in the making.
There you go. And when we talk in 10 years for the 10-year anniversary, you'll say the same thing. You'll just substitute 10 for 5, right?
You got it.
Man. So I'm looking at my lessons, and you know what? I already said it, because I think that's so important, and it's such a foot stomper, is the relationships. And it's not just the relationship with your team in the company. It's the relationship you have with the customers, the relationship you have with the client. And my to differentiate the two, the end user and the client. And oh, by the way, don't forget about the manufacturer, the people who are putting the product together that are part of your team also. And then the one that you said I think is so critical, because I think so many entrepreneurs mess this up, is that investor relationship, and making sure that all these organizations, the internal and the external partners, the strategic partners, all have alignment in their values and those relationships. That is so critical. So I appreciate you bringing that up to reemphasize that, because that's such a critical point. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
As we were talking through the creative outlet, I kind of had a little bit of an epiphany that leadership is a creative outlet. And I guess I'd never really put that together, but like how much more creative does it get than working with people who can do literally anything and act all these different ways and playing with personalities? Like that's just about as creative as it gets. And I never really thought of that as a creative outlet, but that's kind of eye-opening. Of a lot of people who are that people person, want to be that leader for their organization. That's their creative outlet.
Awesome. Dean, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
Well, I will tell you what was reinforced to me was the value of investing in relationships and being very intentional in those relationships you build. So, Otis, the reason you and I are becoming fast friends is, we have that common, veteran connection. We have that common entrepreneur connection. And one of my favorite mantras, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's very much a two-way street. You and I have talked, and one of the things we have on a regular call is, well, how can we help each other? And when you've got like-minded values and sense of purpose, when you've got that mindset, well, you know what, I've got my own needs, but let me focus on Otis and Cam and see how we can help. To me, that makes all the difference in the world.
Awesome. How do folks follow you, get in touch with you? What's the Authentically American website also?
So authenticallyamerican.us, and that .us is a very intentional choice given the equity of our brand. And I would say if you're an individual consumer and you want to get one of these amazing sweat activated t-shirts, or you want to get a fun pair of socks, you can do that as an individual consumer. If you own a business, if you are a leader at a business and you no longer want made in China for your company, we have an opportunity to partner with you. Or if you are leading a charity or a volunteer at a charity and you want to go ahead and not only get amazing apparel, but when we partner with a charity, we provide our goods and services at cost. So there's another way, whether you're an individual consumer, a business owner, a charity, to partner with Authentically American, and it's authenticallyamerican.us. Authenticallyamerican.us is our website.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. I just got to throw in one thing. As a former coach on sabbatical for rugby, I just had an idea, Camden, a sweat activated shirt for the team to wear during workouts. Then you can see who's really putting in the effort.
I'm not sure if that'll work down here, because they're going to be sweat activated by the time they get on the pitch here in Arizona.
Yeah. They step out of the car, they start sweating. Right?
Exactly.
Otis, it's funny you say that, because coaches love that technology, because you don't get beat maybe to appear unless you're getting after it.
There you go. That's awesome. Dean, man, we really appreciate your time today.
What a great discussion, guys. And time just flew by here.
Oh, yeah. It always does. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guest, Dean Wegner, for joining us today. And of course, our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. Get started for free today at findyourpurpose.coach. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Instagram and Facebook, and please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Videos of our podcast on our YouTube page, or you can always get a full archive of our episodes at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.